Good morning. Nice to have you gathering for our session on Pirkei Avot this morning. We'll start in a few minutes. Jackie, are we on? Good morning. Vicky, Jacques, Jackie, Jim, Bob. Let's give it a couple of minutes so that we might start on schedule at 10:30. You can go get your cup of coffee if you don't have it with you and join me. Morning, Kate, Lauren. Lauren is our newest board member. Welcome to the board, Lauren. Morning, Phyllis. Good morning, Kate. Hi, Albert. Yana, all the way from Florida. Give me 1 second. Well, good morning once again, and welcome to our Judaism-to-go. This is our 5th session exploring Pirkei Avot, this wonderful collection of teachings of the ancient rabbis. And this is our last session for this series. We will skip next Wednesday, and then Rabbi Jenny will be with you on Thursday night for a session ushering in the holiday of Shavuot. And the name of that session will be Take 2 Tablets. Of course, a reference to the 10 Commandments, which tradition celebrates were presented to Moses and the Israelites on Mount Sinai at the time of revelation of Torah on the festival of Shavuot. Rabbi Jenny will talk more about that. Today, I'd like to focus on chapter 4, and perhaps we will look at a couple of teachings of chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot. The tractate, as it is before us now, contains 6 chapters. Most scholars agree that the 6th chapter is an addition, a latter collection of sayings on the grandeur of Torah. There are many ancillary classical commentaries and helpful materials if you would like to pursue the study of Pirkei Avot, not only modern commentaries, but additional writings of the ancient and medieval great teachers of Judaism. There is a selection in the Talmud known as the minor tractates, and that includes a collection known as Avot de Rabbi Natan, the Avot, the teachings of the ancestors according to Rabbi Nathan. And that's more of a homiletical commentary to Pirkei Avot. Not only quotes the passages, but goes into moral and psychological reflections on each of the important passages as the Avot de Rabbi Natan progresses. And if you would like to get a little bit beyond the early centuries of the Common Era, of course, we can always go to the Middle Ages. And there, the great Maimonides, the Rambam, Rabbi Moses ben Maimon of Spain, offers us many commentaries, and one of them is known as Shmona Parakim, the 8 chapters. And the 8 chapters is Maimonides' introduction to his commentary of Pirkei Avot. And it's one of the really elegant and insightful, both philosophical and moral reflections on the Jewish tradition. Maimonides essentially goes into a treatise of the soul, medieval psychology and wisdom. So if you have time and you would like to pursue a further study of Pirkei Avot and its many derivatives in the Jewish tradition, I would encourage you to look at Maimonides, the Rambam's Shmona Parakim, 8 chapters. There was a recent edition of it, Berman House, I believe, subtitled A Treatise on the Soul. So this morning, we are going to begin with chapter 4. And as we start chapter 4 of Pirkei Avot, you can access through the virtual resources of Beth-EL, or as I said, you can Google Pirkei Avot or follow in the prayer book itself at page 248, the Lev Shalem prayer book. And with the sayings of chapter 4, we begin to move into the 2nd through early 3rd century of the Common Era. In fact, this is the period when the Mishnah, of which Pirkei Avot forms part, was finally redacted by Rabbi Judah the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, in the year 220 of the Common Era, approximately. We are moving in the direction of teachers of that generation. There might even be a couple of teachers cited here that are post that generation. The rabbis of the Mishnah are referred to as Tanaim in the plural, Tana in the singular, and that means oral teachers. It's an Aramaic word. It's also, it means basket, and many of them were considered baskets full of knowledge, baskets full of information, walking encyclopedias. So the Tana is the rabbi or the teacher of the Mishnaic period, up to the year 220, and then commences the process of interpretation of the Mishnah with the Gemara. Remember, the Mishnah plus the Gemara together constitute the Talmud. The rabbis of the Gemara are generally referred to as Amoraim. Amora or Amoraim, and that means speakers. And these are the interpreters of the Mishnaic tradition. Add a layer on top of that as necessary for a new generation. And of the 63 tractates of the Mishnah, 36 have Gemara. Pirkei Avot does not have a Gemara per se. It stands on its own. Today in chapter 4, we encounter a teacher by the name of Ben Zoma, and that's how he is referred to. His name was Shimon ben Zoma. He was a younger contemporary of the great Rabbi Akiba, about whom we will talk a little later. Ben Zoma was a brilliant scholar, but he was never ordained. He died young. And he is one of 4 individuals in the rabbinic tradition who is said to have explored the secrets of Jewish mysticism, proto-Kabbalah, early speculative theology, seeking to experience the divine, seeking to have a personal experience of God's presence. This type of speculation, very common among other religious groups during that period. A lot has been written about what is known as Gnosticism. And there was Gnosticism in the Jewish tradition, in the early Christian tradition, and it was also a secular, if we can so call it, form of speculation. The word Gnosticism means secret knowledge. And it appears that some of the early rabbis were participants in this way of learning. They wanted a direct apprehension of the divine, not intellectual speculation only, but psychological encounter with the divine, spiritual encounter. And it is said that 4 great scholars of this period participated particularly in this form of theological speculation. In the Jewish tradition, the secrets of this tradition are referred to as pardes, the orchard. They entered the orchard. The word pardes is a word of Persian origin, and it gives us the English term paradise. So 4 people sought to enter paradise, the speculative realm of theology. One was Ben Zoma, and we are told that he cast a glance and died young. The other was Rabbi Ben Azai, who cast a glance and became demented. The other was Elisha ben Abuya, contemporary of Rabbi Akiba, referred to in our sources as Acher, the other one. And why is he Acher? Because the speculation into mystic and Gnostic traditions caused him to be estranged from Judaism. Elisha ben Abuya, or Acher, is the subject of Rabbi Milton Steinberg's novel As a Driven Leaf. Rabbi Milton Steinberg, Beth-El Tzedek's first rabbi of the Joint Congregation. He came to Beth-El Tzedek in 1927 and left in 1933. Wrote one of the most beautiful, powerful American Jewish novels, As a Driven Leaf, the life of Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya. And the 4th scholar that attempted to enter Pardes, the field of speculative theology, was Rabbi Akiba. And according to the tradition, Rabbi Akiba is the only one who remained in peace. All the others suffered tragic consequences from their exploration of this esoteric science. Here we have Ben Zoma in this opening Mishnah, exploring questions that have been part of philosophic tradition for a long time. Socrates speculated and taught about the meaning of wisdom. And you will remember that Socrates' teaching was that the more we know, the least we know. And his method of exploring wisdom was what we call Socratic, through conversation, through posing questions. Both Socrates and the rabbinic tradition believed that you learn best if you learn with another person. and the tradition of studying at least in dyads, chevruta, two people studying a text with one another, posing questions, eliciting information from one another, deepening into the conversation. That is considered a much better way of study in the Jewish tradition than simply reading and studying and reflecting by yourself. Chevruta means friendship, partnership. So here we are in Chevruta this morning. We're looking at a text and considering it together. Rabbi Ben-Zoma taught, who is wise? And his answer, those who learn from everyone. As it is written, and he will quote now a passage, in this case from the Psalms, from all my teachers have I gained understanding. So who is wise? The one who learns from another. Who is mighty? Well, those who conquer their passions, their evil impulse. As it is written, one who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one who rules over one's spirit than one who conquers a city. And he asks, who is rich? Well, those who are content with their portion. As it is written, when you eat the labor of your hands, happy will you be, and all will be well with you. And then, who is honored? Those who honor other people. As it is written, those who honor me, I will honor. But the scorner will be despised. So here we have 4 questions. Who is wise? Who is mighty? Who is wealthy? And who is honored? And we will see this a lot in the Mishnah from now on. Pairing of opposites, showing them how they actually are not opposites, but belong together. The rabbis loved comparison. They loved teaching by contrast and by paradox. And here what we have is, so we think that a learned person is the one who learns, who knows everything and is full of knowledge. No, the learned person is the person who wishes to continue to learn, and the best way to do it is learning from others. The true meaning of wisdom, of self-control, of contentment, of courtesy, are not things that we achieve by ourselves, but things that we achieve in relationship with others. That is the essence of this teaching of Rabbi Shimon ben Zoma. Wisdom is not self-acquired alone. It is shared with people. It is a gift. He who is so proud that he or she thinks he knows it, she knows it all, cannot learn from others, is not truly wise. Learning is an ongoing dialectic, relational activity. We have to see the good and the wisdom in others. Who is mighty? Well, not the person who can go at it by himself, a person who is able to control his passions, his impulses. And here we encounter a term that is very important in the rabbinic tradition, one who controls the yetzer. According to rabbinic psychology, the human being is endowed with 2 inclinations. The yetzer hatov, the inclination to good, and the yetzer hara, the inclination to evil. And we mature as human beings and refine our character as we are able to bring the yetzer hatov, the good inclination, to temper, to control, to discipline the evil inclination. What is the evil inclination? It is anger, it is envy, it is pride, it is anything associated exclusively with self-satisfaction. It is unbridled sex, according to the tradition. So all of these are qualities that the human being will exhibit, and they are in many ways necessary for human survival. We need that passion, which is what the Yetzer is. But the Yetzer has to be, according to the rabbinic tradition, disciplined. And the rabbis see Torah as the disciplining agent of the unbridled Yetzer Hara. And then we come to who is wealthy, who is rich. And then the answer is, well, one who is content, one who is satisfied with what he or she possesses. And this is not a statement of complacency. This is a statement of dignity. It is a statement against unbridled ambition, which is a source of great unhappiness, of course. It doesn't say we should not seek to improve ourselves. We should not seek to do well for ourselves and for our families. Wealth can be used in positive ways. Wealth is never considered an evil in the Jewish tradition. It's a matter of how we use it. Tzedakah is the way in which we help to invest wealth, not only for ourselves, but for the good of others. Shabbat is the way in which we tame the acquisitive instinct, the inclination to always work, get more. Rabbi Harold Kushner, who is known for his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, also wrote a book entitled, When Everything You Ever Wanted Wasn't Enough. It is his commentary on the book of Ecclesiastes, and it is a telling commentary. We know that so much of the emotional problems and the spiritual problems that people confront have to do with wanting more and having less, or perhaps having more and wanting more, which is the equivalent of having more and being less. So that balance in life, Ben Zoma reminds us to take into consideration. And then he asks, who are honorable? And his answer is, well, those who honor others. And the word for others there is abriot, all human beings. We're not talking here particularly about Jews, members of the household of Israel. Every human being created in the image of God deserves to be treated with respect, with honor. And here we have a confluence of ethics with etiquette. Manners are not simply superficialities, but they're expressions of consideration and kindness. They are the lubricating agent of human relations. And so Hillel would elevate the teaching, what is hurtful to you, do not do unto others. So there is Ben Zoma, who is wise, who is mighty, who is wealthy, who deserves honor. Questions that we should continue to think about and explore in relationship. We're going to skip to page 250 in the prayer book and go to 417. This is a teaching that may be familiar to some of you, and it is associated with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai lived between the year 100 and the year 160. This was the period of the Second Revolt and the quashing of Jerusalem finally by the Romans, the expulsion of the Jews from the city of Jerusalem, and really the final expression of Roman domination over the land of Israel. The name of the land was changed by the Romans from Judea, the land of the Judeans, of the Jews, to Palestina. So that term, Palestine, has been the designation of that land from the Roman period, because in antiquity, in biblical times, the Philistines lived there. So the Romans wanted to eliminate any trace of Jewishness, history, presence there, and they changed the name to Palestina. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a disciple of Rabbi Akiba, and he was a teacher of Rabbi Judah Hanasi, the one who compiled the Mishnah. he had to hide from Rome. He hid in a cave with his son after the defeat of Bar Kokhba in the year 135, and he was sentenced to death in absentia by the Romans. He is considered the author of the Zohar, according to tradition, the book of Jewish mysticism that will define Kabbalah in the Middle Ages. We know that the Zohar was actually written by Rabbi Moses de Leon in 13th century Spain, but it is cast in tradition as a vessel of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. To this day, mystics travel to the city of Meron in Israel to visit the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, especially on Lag BaOmer that we observed just recently. And what does Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai teach us? He teaches us that there are three crowns a person may wear. The crown of Torah, the crown of learning, the crown of priesthood, the crown of service, and the crown of royalty, the crown of rule. Learning, religious piety or service, and the crown of Torah, and the crown of priesthood, and the crown of rule, royalty. But then he tells us, above all of these crowns is the crown of a good name, Keter Shem Tov. And elsewhere in the Bible, we find expressions, a good name is better than chosen riches, a good name is better than precious oil. So the concept of Shem Tov, a good name, good character, is superior to learning, to priesthood, and to royalty. Humility is, or could be, and is an expression in Judaism that is above these three power roles. So this goes back to the earlier teaching of Ben Zoma, who is wise, who is wealthy. We encounter in verse 19 an interesting segue into, again, theological speculation, what is called in religious language eschatology. How do we justify what happens at the end of time? And theodicy, how do we justify God's ways in the world? And Rabbi Yanai, who is not often quoted in the Mishnaic tradition, tells us very simply, the tranquility of the wicked and the suffering of the righteous are beyond human understanding. There are good people who suffer. There are bad people who prosper. They are beyond human understanding. That's as much and as humble an answer as you can give. This happens. This is the way of the world. But then theology tries, especially in the Middle Ages, to try to understand, to try to speculate how this happens. And this is where Judaism begins to posit a theory of a world to come, where all these wrongs will be righted, and where the suffering of the righteous will be turned into a blessing in the world to come, and the prosperity of the evil will be in the long term punished. So there is so much, and we have so little time, but the rabbis also teach us about learning and about age. Can the youth learn better than the elders, or do the elders have an advantage in learning? So if you look at 425, Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya, that was Acher, that was the heretic. What did he teach? To what may we compare one who studies as a youth? It is like ink written on fresh paper. And to what may we compare one who studies in old age? It is like ink written on absorbent paper. You've all written on slicky paper, and you've all written on absorbent paper, and certain pens take better to certain forms of paper. But there's an interesting comparison here. The learning of the youth is like a clean slate. There is writing on slicky paper, but it might easily be swept away. The learning of the elders is absorbed. There is more depth to go to. As my professor of Bible used to say in rabbinical seminary, we each bring to our learning an apperceptive mass of understanding. All of our new learning fits into a pre-existing context and content. So is that the absorbent paper? And is the learning of the youth more enduring than the learning of the elders? Well, there is a balance there. And that is reiterated in Mishnah 27, where Rabbi, and wherever the name Rabbi appears, it usually refers to Rabbi Judah Hanasi, sometimes to Rabbi Meir. But Rabbi taught, do not look at the flask, but at its contents. You can find a new flask with old wine and an old flask that does not contain even new wine. Don't look at the flask. Look at the content. A new flask can contain good vintage wine, and you can have an old flask that just contains immature wine that has not yet proven itself, aged, settled. So here, the learning of the youth and the learning of the elders is contrasted. The judgment of the rabbinic tradition is that you can have a wise young scholar. And while age matures us in many ways, not necessarily is age a proof of scholarship or wisdom or understanding. It is all a matter of character. Elsewhere in the Talmud, in the tractate Rosh Hashanah, we read, "Fortunate is the generation in which the elders listen to the younger." That's an amazing statement. Fortunate is the generation in which the elders listen to the younger. And that is, I think, an appropriate lesson with which we can close today. These are times of transition, times of new understanding, and it is a time when we should have ongoing conversations with our youth and with our elders. And it is as necessary for the elders to listen to the young as it is for the young to be attentive to the experience of the elders. This coming Friday evening, we will celebrate as part of our Shabbat services, and we hope that you can join us by Zoom. We will honor the young people who are graduating high school. We will recognize those who graduate college. This is a time of uncertainty. This is a time where dreams and plans have had to be put on hold for many people. Let us honor the learning of the young and share with them, with humility, how we can model both wisdom, character, and the shared experience that comes from being in situations that we just never anticipated, but have to go through together and become strong at the end. It occurred to me the other day that there is a distinction between the words hope and faith, which we often use together. I think hope is the belief that things will turn out okay, and that's very important. But faith is the belief that even if things do not turn out the way we want them, that we will be okay because we have one another to share with. Well, thank you for joining us this morning for learning. Again, No Judaism to go next Wednesday morning. Join Rabbi Jenny next Thursday evening for Tikkun Leil Shavuot, for the learning of the Eve of Shavuot. And then on Friday morning, next week, not this Friday, Friday morning next week, we will have our Shavuot morning services that will include the Yizkor or memorial service. Have a wonderful day and continue studying Pirkei Avot and so many other things that can sustain us during these days. L'chaim.